do you? I want to figure out how I'm going to ask this. I on that. Um, I feel like a lot of people who have loved ones and are trying to help them have this treatment to employment mentality. Like I hear a lot. Well, if they just get a job, it'll almost. They don't say that'll be the cure, but they think that that's what's going to teach them responsibility and all these things. What are your
Right.
feelings are on
Okay, I have a
employment?
lot of opinion about that. So here's something that is essential to everything we're talking about. The world is divided into two types of people, and I know I'm overgeneralizing, but this is a very interesting metaphor. So Marilyn and you and I'm going to tell you, I know you better than you know yourself. Marilyn, you and I are farmers. We wake up in the morning, we think about what's ahead of us in our day. We're anxious, we're goal directed, we think about the obligation. And again, I'll stick with the metaphor of farmers. We go into the field, we weed for 10 hours, we might stop and have lunch. We carry in our mind's eye, it's also called the prefrontal cortex, we carry in our mind's eye future reward. Like in 4 months, when the crop is done, Marilyn and I are going to go into town and buy a tractor. We're going to be able to reap reward. We're very future oriented. That's why we go to college. That's why we do pretty well on exams. That's why we're good citizens. We're very future oriented. Okay, so there's a whole other group of folks that are hunters. When they wake up in the morning, instead of asking themselves, what am I supposed to do with my day to day? They ask themselves the question, am I hungry? If they're hungry, they head out and they kill a bear and they skin the bear and they eat the bear and then they go back and they may have a nap or sit around and shoot the breeze. But they live moment to moment to moment. They have very low frustration tolerance. So think about it. Both the hunters and the farmers can have addictive illness, but the farmers have much better outcomes because they can bring into their mind's eye how it could reward them to stay sober, for example. The hunters, it's very hard for them because they live moment to moment. They have low frustration tolerance. This is their wiring. My son has been a hunter since the day he arrived on Earth. He was 1 day old when we adopted him. He's a hunter, and he's living in a household of farmers. I mean, that's hard too. So anyway, I just want you to know, not everybody has the same brain wiring, and I think the hunters, we have really cruel expectations that they're all going to get a job and be future oriented. They're going to go to college, and no, what they would do well at is something that's very gratifying on a daily basis. I'm not talking about intelligence. The hunters can be smarter than the farmers, and they're very strategic. So they sometimes are financially better off than the farmers because we usually wind up working for people, not for ourselves. But so that's an important, and now you understand the difference. So the recovery rates are different, and I think the hunters are going to have a harder time being in a work program. Marilyn and I, if we had addictive illness, we'd probably do well in a work program. We'd like the work, it'd give us a mission, and we think about how if we're good soldiers, we're going to get out of here. There'll be reward for us.
Yeah. I think that I just I love that analogy, and I love just how you bring in the brain wiring, because I think that's one thing that, again, we judge what's different, but we're just different. People are wired differently, and rather than
Right.
judge one is better or, we can't expect everybody to have farmers' goals. We can't set the goal for everybody in the world to be a farmer and then say that you failed because you didn't farm, because you weren't successful at this thing that you weren't even wired for. And yet that's what we do, all the time, where we have this ideal that everybody's kind of supposed to meet, and then when people aren't even wired for that, we consider them failing.
That's right.
Yeah, we also.
Well,
go ahead. On the
I
show,
was just going to say the farmers are judges. They're auditors. So that's a
good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting because on the show, it being rooted in mindfulness, we often talk about living in the moment, And you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about moment to moment. And the distinction I see there is when we talk about living in the moment, it's a conscious choice, and you have an awareness of what you're doing. Where what it seems like you're talking about is this moment, living moment to moment, but not having the choice to do it. It's being locked and stuck in that moment to moment. And
Well, that's so interesting you should say that, Jayme, because I teach mindfulness and embrace it fully. I mean, it's so much a part of my life. But I have to say, I find, of course, if we're farmers in a highly anxious, future oriented society that puts so much pressure on us every day to worry about the future. Now, remember, anxiety is all about the future. Then mindfulness is our savior. But if we, I think in a way, I'm going to be honest here. My son, you'd like him so much. He's very present. He is mindful.
Hmm.
Now, for example, like a year ago, he was living with us and he ran into the house. He's 34 years old. He ran in. He said, "Mommy, I want to show you something." He was sitting outside, and he said, "I heard a caterpillar munching," and I'm going, "Oh yeah, right. You heard a caterpillar munching," and he showed me a caterpillar that was the largest thing I'd ever heard, and it was literally eating grape leaves and munching. Our son hears those things. He's so present. He loves nature. He sees, if we love to hike with him, he'll see a snake or a lizard that we are so goal directed, we can trip over it and not see it. Our son is wired to be present. So yeah, it's possible that you're correct that he's not saying to himself, "I'm present," but he is present. But our society doesn't reward that very much. Our society rewards our future orientation. So our son, in a way, doesn't fit in here. It's a very hard life for someone who's present.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I think for myself, now that I'm thinking about it, because I like goals is an interesting thing, because I always talk about how you don't necessarily, if you're living in the moment to moment fully, then you don't necessarily need goals, because if you're aware of it, you can be open to the possibilities. But when I engage with society, I I know that I'm not going for the goals, but I act like I am. I put it on so that I will be accepted in the goal-oriented thing. So when someone
Right.
says, "Oh, what are your goals?" I know what the answer should be, even though I personally don't think of it
Right.
that way. It's
Yeah. Right.
interesting how
Right.
to work if you're not what society tells you need to be, you almost have to fake it. And if you don't have that ability to fake it, or don't want to fake it, it's harder.
Well, I have another thought that brings us to the fact that my organization is deeply involved with criminal justice, and that is that the farmers incarcerate the hunters in droves. We don't know what to do with these people. We don't like them. We find them too strategic, and the way that we're dealing with it is incarceration, and that is horrible. I think that if we could learn some manner to appreciate that different what's the right word, framing for the world, that more mindful presentness, and find some kind of mission that would be valuable. Maybe we always said our son would be a brilliant naturalist. If he was basically Darwin, he would have been happy. That's what he excels at, that intuitively. So he is a present person, but he's been in jail over and over and over again because of his illness. And so we